Therefore, Morehouse College, stand to your feet, as it brings me great honor to introduce the son and present to others the remarkable, brilliant, and astonishing Dr. Ann Wimbush Walker.
Mr. Williamson, for such a gracious and flattering introduction. Thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you who have welcomed me back with such fervor and with such dignity and with such honor. To the 11th president of Morehouse College, Dr. John Sylvanus Wilson, Jr. Good to see you, Mr. President. To the Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Jerry Kai Campbell. To Dr. Timothy Sams, Vice President for Student Services. To Mr. Michael Gatewood, President of the Morehouse College Student Government Association. Mr. Will Chandler, Vice President. And to all of the other stalwart men of Morehouse who are officers of this great organization. But to the advisory leadership, Dean Kevin Booker and Mr. Michael Gary. And Dr. Bryant Marks is here, and he wears so many hats, I won't even begin to tell you what they all are. But to the faculty, to the staff, my former colleagues with whom I spent many happy hours celebrating the excellence of this great institution. But especially to you, the men of Morehouse, whose talents and potential have continued even when I left to engage my thoughts for commendation and admiration. And to all of you gathered here this morning, what a signal honor and privilege it is to be in your midst this morning and to celebrate with the Student Government Association, the 4th annual Crown Forum focused on leadership development. In a number of earlier cultures, it was customary to ask of someone, by what authority do you speak? Now, if I were posed with such a question this morning, I think I would take a look at my numerous roll books and records of having taught at Morehouse College as a tenured professor full-time each semester, sometimes teaching overloads and every summer for nearly 3 decades prior to becoming an administrator. If you will do the math, you will find out that I have been privileged to teach 5,375 men of Morehouse who are now Morehouse men. Two of whom are my sons, Michael Kevin Watts and Christopher Nolan Watts, both of whom are in the audience today. 5,375 Morehouse men who today form a great cloud of witnesses as professionals, and today whose life and work give testimony to the legacies of this great institution. So it is by that authority that I am honored to speak to you today. As many of you may know, the men of the Morehouse College Student Government Association have been developing their knowledge of leadership constructs under the guidance of Dean Kevin Booker and Mr. Michael Gary. They are using the book, The Student Leadership Challenge, and they're looking at 5 practices for exemplary leaders written by James Coos and Barry Posner. These practices include model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. Let's give these men and their advisors another round of applause. My message begins this morning with a reference to a television program that aired for about 25 seasons back in the 1950s, and it was called To Tell the Truth. The object of the game was to have a group of panelists determine which one of three contestants was the real person and which of the two of the three were imposters. All three contestants used the same name, and it was the duty of the panelists to question them to find flaws in their presentations so that they could determine who were the imposters. And then the host would ask the trademark question, will the real Mr. Blank please stand up? The imposters would then make a motion as if to stand, but only one, the real contestant, would eventually stand up. Many years later, today in 2014, we pose a similar question, but this time we ask, will the real Morehouse man please stand up? There has never been a time when great leaders, strong leaders, leaders who are exemplars of the best of character and integrity were needed more than they are needed now. Many of our nation's schools, for example, are faced with unbelievable challenges. A second grader carried a gun to school capable of blowing up a Mack truck. One teenager killed another teenager because of a dispute over a sandwich. A short kid killed a tall kid because he was picking on him. And alarming statistics plague the landscape. 39% of the homeless population in the United States is young people under the age of 18. A Department of Health and Human Services study found that 46% of homeless youth left their home because of physical abuse, and 17% left because of sexual abuse. And more children are born from NBA players in cities where they play than in their own families. And many of these NBA players retire broke because of countless paternity suits, and the list goes on and on and on. We live in a time when the only hope for the African American community is intelligent, focused, and well-educated young women, and especially young men like you, to get involved in the programs of service that address societal ills. We can no longer look to the federal government or to another race to solve our problems. But for you see, it was not until a strong coterie of mostly black leaders, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others from colleges and universities, from churches, from community groups, organized and strategized to challenge the process and to meet head on the ravages of segregation in the South. It was then and only then that change began to take place. If change for the better is going to continue to emerge, then we ourselves must make it happen again. I do not need to remind you that Morehouse College is not the only place in the United States that has produced great leaders, but it just seems to me that a place with this many intelligent young men engaged in the Congress of Development and Learning should also be the place that produces the lion's share of strong leadership in this country. It just makes sense to me. Now, keep in mind that attending Morehouse College alone will not automatically make you a great leader. For leadership comes from a certain development and global exposure, from a certain bent of mind, from a certain character and behavior, a certain engagement of intentional training, and from a certain pattern of choices that one continues to make throughout one's life. In other words, it is a process. So I come to you this morning asking the inexorable question, will the real Morehouse man please stand up? We must also ask that if there are any imposters out there masquerading as the real Morehouse man. For you see, the imposter is sometimes difficult to identify because he operates under the insignia of Morehouse College just like you do. And he places the name Morehouse on everything he owns. But the imposter cannot be depended on when the clarion call is made and the occasion demands his presence, for the imposter never realizes that the hallmark of every great leader is service. The imposter is likely to be one who came to Morehouse, who went through Morehouse, but Morehouse did not go through him. In his years at Morehouse, the imposter would go to class sometimes, but he would never work up to his potential. Instead, the imposter would do just enough to beat by, just enough to get over. But when it came to demonstrating the tenets of servant leadership, when it came to inspiring a vision, when it came to modeling the way, the imposter was always and is always a failure. The world soon finds him out, and the gig is up. In many ways, the imposter was like the man who was a member of the emperor's orchestra in ancient China. He had obtained his position as a flautist, if you will, because his potential as a musician was recognized early in his life. Although the flautist had talent, he never rehearsed, Dr. Oliver. He never trained. He never tried to develop his skills as a flute player. Instead, for many years, he held the flute up against his lips, and when the royal band played, he pretended to be playing along with them. No one detected his duplicity, and for these performances, he received a modest salary and managed to live comfortably. But one day, the emperor decided, I want to have something different. So he called in the flautist and said, I want to have a different presentation. I would like to see a solo performance, and I would like for you to play solo. The flautist was dismayed, and as the day approached, he became desperate. What could he do? All of his pretense had finally caught up with him. He was now in the limelight. He was a leader, and he was unable to model the way. On the morning of his solo appearance, he took poison and died rather than face the music. And that is why today we still use the expression, he had to face the music, or he was not able to face the music. Every one of you in here this morning, in some form or the other, will one day have to face the music. For when you leave these hallowed halls of Morehouse College, you will many times over be expected to do a solo performance all by yourself with nobody to help you. And you have to be prepared. You have to be ready. Will the real Morehouse man please stand up and face the music? The imposters are everywhere. They can be detected because they don't have their priorities in order. They don't know how to keep proper balance between fun and seriousness and between work and play. Now, I'm sure many of the freshman class know that doing this is not always easy because at Morehouse, as in other schools, temptations are everywhere with parties and jams on the yard, interspersed between, research papers and pop quizzes, when the card games and late night rap sessions in somebody's room are taking place. They compete with book reports due and panel discussion to prepare, with clubs to join and games to attend. You will be challenged over and over and over again to prioritize and to strike a balance between what you want to do and what you know you should do. There will be times when temptations will entice you to act counter to your best self, when the appeal would be to do that which you have been taught all your life not to do. But the party is on, and everybody is going in that direction. But when Cutie Pie Kia, you know, the one with the whispery voice, calls, and before you know it, a full hour has gone by and you have not even cracked one book. Then drop dead gorgeous Taisha calls and talks for 30 whole minutes, all down all the time with DJ Snake and Lil Jon. Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Turn down for what? Blasting in your ear. And then, lovely Lilton Leisha. Her name is not Leisha. Leisha calls, and she wants to go out. And she reminds you the club's going up on a Tuesday. The club's going up on a Tuesday. The club's going up on a Tuesday. Yet you have 2 tests coming up back to back. You know you have 3 chapters to read, and you know you have a paper to do. Your grades were not very good at midterm, and you simply cannot afford to lose your scholarship. But all you can hear are your boys leaving for the party, running out the door yelling, "We them boys! We them boys! We them boys!" When the animal in you says, "Go," and the God in you says, "Yield not to temptation, for yielding is sin," what do? Are you a real Morehouse man enough to turn off your phone and pick up your books and get to work? Or do you pick up your keys instead, promising yourself that you'll leave a little early? But you never do. You never have. And you never will with that attitude. I submit to you this morning that recess is over. It's time to get serious. It's time to get serious. For in the final analysis, it's not about getting down. It's about getting up. In the final analysis, it's not about jiving. It's about surviving. In the final analysis, it's not about boogieing down. It's about climbing up. That is how you stand in the face of controversy, in the face of temptation, in the face of hard choices, determines your character, determines your realness as a Morehouse man. And every time you perform up to your potential, you add eminence to the immense reputation of Morehouse College. On the other hand, every time you fail to do your best, you are letting down your institution. Every time you fail to do your best, you are weakening the value of a Morehouse College degree. Will the real Morehouse man please stand up? For you see, there are millions who did not make it this far. You are one of the ones who did. There are millions who long for an opportunity to sit in a seat at an institution of higher learning. You are fortunate enough to have such an opportunity. These opportunities must not be taken lightly, because the data suggests that there's a downward trend in the number of bachelor's degrees conferred on African Americans through the last 3 decades. Such a declaration is alarming, particularly since without HBCUs, most of the black leadership in this country and their contributions to society would never have been a reality. Thus, you must make the most of your stay here, and you must never take this opportunity for granted. Will the real Morehouse man who prioritizes for excellence please stand up? There's a man who planted a carob tree, C-A-R-O-B, which, as you may know, is a tree that takes 70 years to bear its first fruit. As the man was planting the tree, a passerby came and he said, "Why are you bothering to plant a carob tree? You're not going to live long enough to even eat of its fruit." "Well," said the man, "years ago, my grandfather planted such a tree for me, and I am eating of its fruit today. So now I am planting a carob tree so that someone long after I am gone may likewise enjoy the benefits of my labor." Like that man, you too must be about the business of planting carob trees, for your success today rests in part upon the legacies provided by those who have gone before you. If you say you are a real Morehouse man, then somebody ought to know it. Not by the maroon and white paraphernalia you wear, not by the braggadocio polysyllabic terms you drop every now and then to impress others and make them feel that they are less than you, not even by the awards and plaques hanging on your wall, but by the deeds you engage in to make life better for others. For real. A real Morehouse man reaches down to pull somebody up, and he reaches back to pull somebody else forward. In the words of Norman Schaefer at the close of life, the question will not be how much do you have, but how much have you given? The question will not be how much have you won, but how much have you done? The question will not be not how much you have saved, but how much you have sacrificed for the good of others. For as long as there is a lower class, I am in it. As long as there is a criminal element, I am of it. And as long as there is a man in jail, I am not free. Will the real Morehouse man, engaged in helping others, please stand? But let me hasten to say that for some of you, getting a college education is a daily struggle and a difficult task, to say the least. For you, success will not always be easy, and achievement will not be found on the railings of a crystal stair. Some of you may be like the students that I've taught before, and I know this is still going on. I hope it's not, but it is across the country, where students are having to sleep in their cars because they cannot afford residential living. Some of you may be like the student in my world literature class years ago, and we were going over work, and he stopped me. He said, "Dr. Watts, I have to make it." I said, "Yes, you do." And I moved on. He said, "Dr. Watts, you don't hear me. I have to make it." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I came from a small town. I came from a family where they did not encourage me. And they said to me, your mother wasn't anything. Your daddy wasn't anything. And you over there at Morehouse College think you're going to be something. You're not going to be anything either." So he said, "Dr. Watts, I got to make it. I got to make it." And he did. Another student came in my office, and he was talking about the purpose for which he came, and his stomach was growling so that it was disruptive. And I said, "Mr. X, what's going on? Your stomach is growling." He said, "Oh, it does that all the time." I said, "Are you eating?" He said, "Well, I have paid my bills, and all I have left is enough money for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich once a day." And I said, "Well, how are you managing?" He said, "I'm working 2 jobs and taking a full load." He said, "How do you do that?" He said, "One job after my classes goes from 6 to 12 in the evening. The second job, 1 to 4 in the morning. I sleep from 4 to 6. I get up and study until my 8:30, and I get ready for my 9 o'clock class." He said, "But Dr. Watts, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. This is temporary." And he did. Another student came into my office, and he said, "Dr. Watts, I didn't come to complain." He said, "But I'm sleeping in a crawl space of a house. I can't afford residential life. But the gentleman told me I could sleep there for free. But now that the weather is colder and the wind is blowing in, and I wake up and I'm soaking wet, and I can't stay there anymore." Well, I called 3 real Morehouse men who at that time were class deans. They were the late Dean Thomas Blocker, the late Dean Eddie Gaffney, and the present Dean Alvin Darden. And I said to them, gentlemen, a Morehouse man in the making should not be in a crawl space. A Morehouse man in the making should not be sneezing and coughing with colds and other kinds of ailments. What can you do? Because he's going to need books. He's going to be clothed, need new clothes. They said, we got this, Ann. We got this. We'll take care of it. And they did. And the young man graduated and did well. Now, what do you do when seemingly all the cards are stacked against you? What does one do? Evidence shows that students with a spiritual life tend to be more successful than those who do not have a spiritual life. Accompanied by a belief in a higher power than you to sustain you during difficult times has its place. Whether Jew or Buddhist, whether Muslim or Christian, a strong spiritual life will enable you to navigate the stress and the challenges of modern living. One needs to therefore do what Dr. Howard Thurman calls a love in the rhythm of doing. For you see, every now and then we all need to take a break from the toil and struggles and engage in some quiet time. Dr. Howard Thurman reminds us to center down to that reservoir of the spiritual that is in us. And in those quiet moments, one's idea of the best and the highest takes on an almost transcendent character. And your vision will be clearer. Everything that happened to you in the past will begin to make sense. A sense of calm and peace will come over you. And then once you do that, you're ready to get back up and engage in daily life, but this time with a renewed vigor, a newfound courage to continue on. So center down to find out who you are. Center down to learn the landscape of your dreams. Center down until you access that something that makes you keep going even when your battery may not be working. Your feet will begin to move to the rhythms of other drums. And the mountains which you thought you could never conquer now will seem easier to climb. It was John Miller who said, circumstances and situations do color life. But you have been given the mind to choose what color your life will be. So if you're feeling a little bothered this morning, you might need to do some life redecorating. Send a text or a tweet to your friends and tell them, I'm doing some redecorating today. You see, I'm changing out the color scheme in my life. Instead of gloom, I'm coloring it joy. Instead of anger and resentment, I'm coloring it peace and love. Instead of doubt and despair, I'm coloring it faith and hope. And while I'm at it, I've got some junk that I need to throw out that even goodwill will not want. You see, I'm throwing out worry and fear. I'm throwing out loneliness. I'm throwing out feelings of depression and despair. I'm throwing out feelings of inadequacy and an inability to cope. And if they begin to look at you a little strangely, say, well, I'm also, while I'm at it, going to have some cosmetic surgery done. You see, I'm cutting out some of my so-called friends who really don't mean me any good. I'm cutting out some of my so-called running buddies who are not about anything. I'm pruning out those negative people in my life, those who are always finding fault, always criticizing, always discouraging, and always limiting me instead of inspiring me with a shared vision. And above all, I'm cutting out worry about things over which I have no control. Worrying about tuition for next semester and whether or not I can return in January. Worrying about problems back home. Worrying about that relationship where neither one of us is on the same page. I'm cutting out fear over things I cannot change. and putting them in the hand of the man who steals the water. I'm calling out anxiety and stress and giving them to the man who calmed the sea, to the one who didn't bring me this far to leave me here. So when you see me smiling, I'm learning how to make the best out of a bad situation. When you hear me singing, I will be singing because I'm happy. I will be singing because I'm free. Because in the words of Thomas Tarr, I will not allow minor inconveniences to interfere with major achievement. Will the real Morehouse College, Morehouse man, please stand up. In closing, you know the story of the train loaded with toys and good things to eat, and it broke down. And there was nobody to pull the cars. The little children were at the top of the mountain waiting for these things, the cargo. Several important engines came along, but none of them wanted to pull the cars up the mountain. But along came a smiling little engine who said, I will do my best to get the train up the mountain. Now, the history doesn't tell us this, but somehow or the other, if you would just forgive me, I really believe that was a Morehouse man, a real Morehouse man engine saying, I will go. And then once the cars were hooked up, he began to chant, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, until finally he was able to climb up the mountain. And in great triumph, the little engine proclaimed, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. Now, this is a simple story, but it has a great deal of meaning. In many ways, you must be like that little engine. You must make it up that mountain because the cargo you will be carrying will be vital and necessary. For at the top of that mountain await the poor and the disenfranchised. At the top of that mountain await the underprivileged and the underserved. The cargo you will be carrying will be leadership, mentorship, role modeling. So hook up your engine this morning and go up that mountain of educational preparedness. It may take you a while, but go on up that mountain. Your financial aid may run out, but go on up that mountain. Funds from home may dry up, but go on up that mountain. You may get laid off from your job, but go on up that mountain. And when the naysayers come, and they will, to discourage you, drown them out with, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And when you reach the top of that mountain, like all real Morehouse men, tell your distractors, I thought I could, I thought I could, I thought I could. So up that mountain, men of the freshman class, filled with promise and potential, the class of 2018. Up that mountain, men of the sophomore class, you are halfway there. The dynamic men of the class of 2017. Up that mountain, men of the mighty junior class. Don't you stop. Don't you stop now. Don't you stop, because you're almost there. The strong men of the class of 2016. Up that mountain, men of the senior class, the determined and distinguished men of the class of 2015. Victory is almost yours. So you go on up that mountain, for you can see clearly now. The rain is gone. Gone are the dark clouds that had you blind. You can see clearly now. The pain is gone. All the bad feelings have disappeared. Look up and you will see the rainbow you have been praying for. It's going to be a bright, sunshiny day. And commendations for your tenacity, commendations for your perseverance are already being writ on the walls of excellence and achievement. A new day is dawning. A new hope is on the horizon. Yesterday is gone, and tomorrow is full of promise. The bells are ringing. The birds are singing. The time is now. So will the real Morehouse man. Please, please, please stand up. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Gentlemen, would you please take your seats? The provost has allowed a 5-minute grace period for the next class, so please stay for the remainder of the program. We'll be only a couple minutes, all right? All right. Thank you. At this time, it gives me great pleasure to present this award to Dr. Ann Wimbush-Watts on behalf of the Morehouse College SGA. Let's please give her another round of applause. All right?
And also on behalf of the Student Government Association, especially the Senate, we'd like to present you with these flowers.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.